The orange violation notice stayed under my windshield wiper all afternoon, curling at the edges in the Texas heat. Every time the wind shifted, the paper scraped softly against the glass like fingernails. I left it there on purpose. By 3 o'clock, 3 more notices had appeared around the neighborhood. Same bright paper. Same black lettering. Same thread about accelerated enforcement. Brenda was not targeting random people anymore. She was making examples. I drove down Willow Creek Boulevard with my windows cracked just enough to smell fresh mulch and chlorine drifting from the community pool. Half the houses looked nervous. Curtains moved when my truck passed. 2 landscapers stopped talking when they saw the orange paper on my windshield. The whole subdivision felt tighter now. Quieter. Like everybody was waiting for something. Then I saw the Henderson place. Their trash bins were gone. Both of them. Mr. Henderson stood in his driveway staring at the curb with his arms hanging stiff at his sides. The man was 70 if he was a day. Vietnam veteran. Heart surgery scar visible every summer when he wore sleeveless shirts to water his tomatoes. "They fined me $600, he muttered when I pulled over. His voice sounded dry. For leaving the bins out 30 minutes early. A tow truck sat half a block away near the clubhouse entrance. Engine idling. Ready. I followed his eyes and spotted Brenda near the pool fence talking to 2 board members. White pantsuit. Gold clipboard. Perfect blonde hair that never moved even in the wind. She laughed at something one of them said while Henderson stood there trying to breathe through humiliation. That told me everything I needed to know about her system. Fear first. Paper second. Pressure always. I asked Henderson for a copy of the violation. His fingers shook slightly when he handed it over. The paper smelled faintly like cigarette smoke and printer toner. I noticed something immediately. Wrong section code. Wrong enforcement timeline. Wrong board authorization number at the bottom. Sloppy. Very sloppy. Did you attend a hearing? I asked. He blinked at me. What hearing? Exactly. A sprinkler hissed nearby. Somewhere behind the clubhouse, children screamed and splashed in the pool while Brenda manufactured fake enforcement actions 20 yards away. The contrast almost made me smile. I folded the notice carefully and handed it back. Do not pay anything yet, I said. Henderson looked around before answering. You should leave this neighborhood while you still can. Then he walked inside without another word. That sentence stayed with me the rest of the afternoon. Not because it scared me. Because it sounded rehearsed. Like he had watched this happen before. I got home just before sunset. The gate camera rotated slowly above the entrance road, tracking every car that passed through. I knew that system well. I helped design the county integration after a fraud investigation 2 years earlier. Every timestamp synced automatically to county storage every 6 hours. Every audio clip. Every plate scan. Every enforcement interaction near the gatehouse. Brenda still did not know that. She thought the cameras belonged only to the HOA. That misunderstanding was going to become expensive. I stepped into my garage and set my keys beside a stack of unopened moving boxes. The air smelled like sawdust, motor oil, and fresh paint. Quiet place. Simple place. Exactly why I bought it. Then my phone vibrated across the workbench. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Almost. The voicemail arrived before the second ring ended. Female voice. Whispering fast. Check the board meeting minutes from April. Before they erased them. Then the line went dead. I stared at the phone while the garage light buzzed overhead. Somebody inside Willow Creek was finally getting nervous. Rain rolled across Willow Creek just after midnight. Fat drops hammered the gutters and turned the streetlights into blurry gold smears outside my kitchen window. I sat at the counter with my laptop open and the anonymous voicemail replaying softly through one earbud. Check the board meeting minutes from April. The voice sounded older. Nervous. Like somebody hiding in their own house. I logged into the HOA resident portal using the temporary credentials they handed out after closing. Slow server. Cheap security. Brenda. Spent money on intimidation, not infrastructure. The homepage loaded with smiling stock photos and slogans about community values. Then I clicked the archived board records. April was missing. Not corrupted. Not locked. Gone. That was interesting. I leaned back slowly and listened to the rain tapping against the windows. A normal HOA does not erase meeting records. Especially not during active enforcement actions. I opened the County Mirror archive instead. Most associations never realize local servers cache uploaded records automatically during annual compliance filings. Brenda definitely did not know. The file appeared after a few seconds. April board meeting minutes. 53 pages. I started reading. By page 6, my coffee had gone cold. By page 12, I understood why somebody whispered into a burner phone. Brenda had been running Willow Creek like a private business. Fines issued without hearings. Votes approved without quorum. Selective enforcement lists marked with color codes beside homeowner names. Red marks beside military families. Yellow beside elderly residents. Blue beside non-compliant personalities. My name was already highlighted in blue. I stared at that line longer than I should have. Non-compliant personality. The phrase almost sounded clinical. Like I was a malfunction she intended to repair. Thunder cracked outside hard enough to shake the glass. I kept scrolling. Then I found the part that made my jaw tighten. Accelerated lien pathway approved for resistant homeowners prior to county mediation review. Illegal. Completely illegal. You cannot bypass county review timelines for residential enforcement in Texas. Not legally. Not quietly. But Brenda had typed it into official meeting records like nobody would ever challenge her. That kind of confidence only comes from repetition. She had done this before. Probably for years. Another attachment sat at the bottom of the file. Internal enforcement recommendations. I opened it. Names. Addresses. Notes. One resident received violations after speaking against a landscaping contract. Another after questioning budget discrepancies. Henderson was listed for compliance pressure escalation. They targeted him over trash bins because he refused a special assessment increase last winter. My windshield notice suddenly felt a lot less personal. This was organized. Systematic. The rain intensified outside. Water rushed through the curb drains while lightning flashed across the subdivision pool. Quiet houses. Trim lawns. Perfect sidewalks. Underneath it all sat a machine built on fear and paperwork. Then my phone buzzed again. This time it was a text message from an unknown number. 3 words. She checks garages. I stood up immediately and crossed the house. The motion light over my driveway flickered pale white through the rain. My garage door was still closed. But shadows moved near the side fence. Slow movement. Careful movement. I killed the kitchen light and waited. The air inside the house felt electric. Cold rain smell drifting through the vents. Another shadow crossed the frosted garage window. Then came the metallic rattle of someone testing the side gate latch. Not random. Not curious. Deliberate. I stayed perfectly still beside the window while the security camera timestamp glowed red on my phone screen. 10 seconds later, the rattling stopped. Footsteps splashed away into the darkness. By morning, Brenda was going to learn somebody had started recording back. The security footage looked worse in daylight. Rainwater streaked across the camera lens while a hooded figure stood beside my garage fence at 12:43 a.m., rattling the latch twice before stepping back into the shadows. No face visible. No license plate. But the timing mattered. The figure appeared exactly 22 minutes after I accessed the April meeting records. That was not coincidence. Morning heat rolled over Willow Creek early. By 8 o'clock, the sidewalks already shimmered under the sun and sprinklers clicked across trimmed lawns in perfect rhythm. I drove to the clubhouse with the footage loaded on my phone and the printed board record sealed inside a plain manila folder. The building sat near the entrance fountain like a small bank branch pretending to be friendly. White columns. Fake stone. American flag snapping sharply above the parking lot. Brenda's white Lexus was already parked out front. Of course it was. Through the clubhouse windows, I could see board members gathered around a conference table. Coffee cups. Donuts. Smiles that disappeared the second I walked in. The lobby smelled like burnt coffee and lemon cleaner. Brenda looked up from her paperwork slowly. "Mr. Caldwell," she said, smooth as polished glass. "Another complaint?" I placed my phone on the counter and played the footage without answering. The rattling metal echoed softly through the lobby speakers. One board member stopped chewing. Another shifted in his chair. Brenda did not blink once. That impressed me more than it should have. "Interesting," she said finally. "Probably teenagers. Teenagers usually do not arrive right after database access logs update." Her smile flickered. Tiny movement. Barely there. But I saw it. So did the older man sitting beside her. Treasurer maybe. Gray mustache. Nervous fingers. Brenda folded her hands together. "You seem unusually interested in association records for a new resident." There it was again. That subtle pressure underneath her words. Not curiosity. Surveillance. I leaned against the counter casually and glanced toward the hallway behind her. Filing cabinets lined the back office wall. One drawer sat slightly open. Thick folders inside marked with colored tabs. Red. Yellow. Blue. Same colors from the enforcement lists. Brenda noticed my eyes drift. She stepped sideways just enough to block the view. "Residents should focus on compliance," she said. "Not administrative processes they do not fully understand." The room went quiet after that. Even the air conditioner sounded louder. I pulled a folded paper from my folder and slid it across the counter. County Archive copy. April Board Minutes. The exact page authorizing accelerated liens. The treasurer's face lost color immediately. Brenda looked down for half a second before recovering. "Those are internal drafts." "Interesting," I said. "Because they were filed as official submissions." A board member near the coffee station coughed into his fist. Nobody looked at him. Brenda picked up the paper carefully. Her nails tapped once against the margin. Then she smiled again. Smaller this time. Colder. "You really should stop digging into things that create unnecessary tension in a community." Outside, a lawn crew started leaf blowers near the pool entrance. The low mechanical hum filled the silence between us. I could smell fresh gasoline drifting through the open doors. Brenda leaned forward slightly. "People who escalate situations here usually regret it." "Not a threat exactly. Worse. A habit." I tucked the folder back under my arm and started toward the exit. Halfway to the door, the nervous treasurer spoke for the first time. Quiet voice. Rough around the edges. "Brenda," he said carefully, "maybe we should postpone the Henderson lien vote tonight." Brenda never turned toward him. "No," she answered. Flat. Immediate. Final. Then I noticed something taped beside the meeting room schedule. Emergency board hearing. 7 p.m. Special enforcement agenda. My address sat at the top of the list. Somebody had moved this much faster than planned. The clubhouse parking lot was almost full by 6:30. Pickup trucks. Luxury SUVs. Golf carts lined up near the fountain like people were arriving for a neighborhood barbecue instead of a public execution. Heat still radiated off the asphalt even after sunset. The air smelled like chlorine from the pool mixed with fresh-cut cedar mulch from the entrance beds. I stayed in my truck for a minute and watched residents walk toward the meeting room with their heads down. Nobody laughed. Nobody lingered. Brenda had trained this neighborhood well. Inside, folding chairs filled the main hall in tight rows. Cheap fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A projector hummed near the front wall beside an American flag and the HOA crest mounted behind the board table. Brenda sat in the center seat wearing a cream blazer that matched the clubhouse walls almost perfectly. Calm. Controlled. Like she had rehearsed every second already. The treasurer from earlier sat 2 seats away, sweating through his collar before the meeting even started. I noticed something else immediately. A county mediation notice hung near the side bulletin board. Expired. Brenda had covered the updated posting with a landscaping committee flyer. That was not accidental. Residents filed in quietly around me. Henderson sat near the back clutching a folder against his chest. Mrs. Landry avoided eye contact entirely. 2 younger couples whispered near the coffee station until Brenda looked up. Then the room went silent again. She enjoyed that silence too much. At exactly 7, Brenda tapped her pen against the microphone once. Special enforcement hearing is now called to order. Her voice echoed sharply through the room speakers. The projector behind her lit up with my address in large black letters. A few people shifted in their seats. Somebody near the back muttered, "Jesus Christ." Brenda began listing violations one after another. Vehicle compliance. Improper storage visibility. Failure to cooperate with enforcement procedures. She spoke quickly. Smoothly. Like reading grocery items from a prepared list. Every few minutes she glanced toward the audience instead of me. This hearing was never about solving anything. It was theater. Then she introduced photographs. Enlarged pictures of my driveway appeared on the projector screen. Time stamps. Zoomed angles. Even photos through my side fence. That got my attention. A low murmur spread through the room when one image showed the inside of my partially open garage. Brenda clicked to the next slide without hesitation. The association reserves investigative authority regarding compliance concerns, she said. Investigative authority. Another phrase people use when they know the real word sounds illegal. I raised one hand calmly. Who authorized entry beyond the property line? Brenda ignored the question. Continued hostility toward board procedures has forced accelerated enforcement recommendations. There it was again. Accelerated enforcement. Same wording from the April records. The treasurer looked physically ill now. Sweat rolled beside his ear while Brenda kept speaking into the microphone like she was untouchable. Then she held up a stack of papers thick enough to bend under their own weight. Due to repeated resistance, she announced, the board is initiating preliminary lien review effective tonight. A sharp inhale moved through the room. Henderson lowered his eyes immediately. 2 residents stood up quietly and walked toward the exit. They did not want witnesses seeing them stay. Brenda noticed but continued anyway. I could hear the projector fan spinning harder behind her. Hot electrical smell drifted through the room. I finally stood up. Every chair creaked as people turned toward me. Brenda smiled slowly. She thought this was the moment I would lose control. Instead, I pulled a folded county archive document from my folder and held it where the front row could see the header clearly. Official filing stamp. April board minutes. The room changed instantly. Small movement. Tiny reactions. Fear travels fast when paperwork becomes public. Brenda stopped smiling for exactly 1 second. Then the clubhouse doors opened behind me. 3 more residents walked in carrying orange violation notices. The room shifted the second those residents walked in holding orange notices. You could feel it. Chairs creaked. Somebody near the coffee station whispered a curse under their breath. Brenda stayed seated, but her fingers tightened around the microphone base hard enough for her knuckles to pale under the fluorescent lights. The 3 residents stopped near the center aisle without speaking. One was a young mother still wearing hospital scrubs. Another was an older man with grease stains on his work shirt. The third carried a violation packet so thick the staples barely held. "We got these today," the woman said quietly. Her voice echoed more than she expected in the silent room. Brenda smiled immediately. "Too fast. Please submit procedural concerns during designated review windows." The woman did not move. "You fine me for my son's wheelchair ramp." That landed hard. Even the projector fan seemed louder afterward. Brenda adjusted papers on the table without looking up. "Exterior modifications require architectural approval." "It was approved," the woman answered. "Twice." A low murmur spread through the audience. The treasurer rubbed both hands down his face like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Brenda finally stood. Cream blazer perfectly pressed. Chin lifted. "This hearing concerns Mr. Caldwell," she snapped. "Not unrelated emotional grievances." Emotional grievances. That phrase almost turned the room against her by itself. I watched people's faces change one by one. Fear was still there, but now something else mixed into it. Recognition. The moment people realized they were never isolated cases. Brenda sensed it too. That was why she moved faster next. "Security," she said sharply, pointing toward the aisle. "Escort non-agenda participants outside." The guard near the doorway hesitated. He looked at the wheelchair ramp violation notice. Then at the residents. Then at Brenda. "Now," she repeated. But he did not move. That tiny refusal cracked something open inside the room. The older mechanic stepped forward and dropped his violation packet onto the front table. Paper exploded everywhere. Notices. Fine statements. Hearing denials. Late fees. I caught several addresses from the stack. Brenda had targeted almost every house near the older side of the subdivision. Lower property values. Fixed incomes. Veterans. Widows. Easier pressure points. "You told me my flagpole threatened property values," the mechanic said. "It is 4 feet tall." More murmuring. Louder now. Brenda slammed her palm against the table microphone. The sharp pop of feedback cut through the room. "This board will maintain order." But order was already slipping away from her. Henderson slowly stood from the back row holding his folder against his chest. The room quieted immediately when people noticed him. "My wife died last winter," he said. Rough voice. Steady enough to hurt. "They fined me while I was in hospice with her." Nobody interrupted him. Not even Brenda. Henderson opened his folder with trembling hands and removed a photograph. Small yellow house. Christmas lights still hanging from the gutters. "She loved those lights," he whispered. "Brenda fined me every day I left them up after January." The silence afterward felt enormous. Then somebody near the front said, "Jesus." Brenda grabbed the microphone again. Selective stories do not override community standards. But her voice sounded thinner now. The authority was still there, but the certainty. Underneath it had started cracking. I stepped toward the front table and placed the county archive documents beside her projector remote. Community standards do not override state compliance procedures either, I said calmly. Brenda looked directly at me then. Really looked for the first time. No smile. No performance. Just calculation. Her eyes moved briefly toward the side office hallway where the filing cabinet sat behind the closed door. That glance lasted less than a second. It was enough. Because now I knew exactly where the real records were stored. Then the clubhouse lights flickered once overhead. The clubhouse light steadied after the flicker, but the room never recovered its balance. People sat straighter now. Eyes moved differently. Fear had shifted into attention, and Brenda could feel it slipping through her hands one resident at a time. She grabbed the projector remote and cleared the screen abruptly. My address disappeared. The blank white wall behind her almost looked cleaner without it. This meeting is suspended pending legal review, she announced. Quick move. Too quick. The treasurer looked relieved for half a second until Brenda turned toward him. Robert, collect all enforcement packets before residents leave. There it was again. Control first. Evidence second. I watched Robert freeze in place beside the coffee station. His tie hung crooked now. Sweat stains darkened under his arms. He did not answer her immediately. Brenda stepped closer. Now. Instead of moving toward the residence, Robert looked at me. Tiny glance. Barely noticeable. But I caught it. So did Brenda. The temperature inside that room seemed to drop 10 degrees. A resident near the back quietly folded his orange notice and slipped it into his jacket instead of handing it over. Then another did the same. Brenda saw that too. Association documents remain HOA property, she snapped. Unauthorized distribution may trigger legal consequences. Nobody moved. The air conditioner rattled overhead while the smell of burnt coffee drifted through the hall. Then the young mother with the wheelchair ramp violation stood taller and said, "You already threatened us with everything else." A few heads nodded. Not dramatic. Just enough. Brenda's jaw tightened hard enough for the muscles near her temple to move. She pointed toward me without taking her eyes off the crowd. This man is manipulating residents with incomplete information. That almost made me smile. Incomplete information was exactly what built her entire system. I reached into my folder and removed a second document packet. Thicker this time. County mirrored submissions. Enforcement logs. Time stamps. Internal correspondence records. I laid them across the front table slowly enough for everyone nearby to see the official county headers. Paper against wood sounded incredibly loud in that silent room. Brenda's eyes locked onto the documents instantly. Not fear yet. Recognition. She knew what they were before she even touched them. "You accessed protected files," she said quietly. "No," I answered. "Your board submitted them voluntarily during annual compliance review." Robert closed his eyes briefly after hearing that. Brenda turned toward him so sharply her chair wheels bumped the wall behind her. "You told me county mirrors only retained financial summaries." Robert swallowed hard. That was before the storage policy update. There it was. The first crack from inside her own board. Residents started whispering louder now. Somebody pulled out a phone openly this time. Another resident began photographing the documents from 2 rows back. Brenda noticed every single movement. Her control depended on silence. Cameras destroy silence. She stepped around the table toward me, heels striking the floor in sharp little bursts. "You have no authority here," she hissed under her breath. Calm voice. Tight face. Expensive perfume mixing with stale projector heat. I looked at her for a second before answering. Then I reached into my inside jacket pocket and placed a dark leather credential wallet beside the county files. Gold federal seal. Full identification. Senior compliance investigator. Housing and Civil Enforcement Division. The room stopped breathing. Literally. No projector hum. No whispers. Nothing. Brenda stared at the badge without blinking. Her expression did not collapse all at once. It happened in pieces. First confusion. Then calculation. Then the slow realization that every violation, every hidden file, every recorded threat inside Willow Creek now belonged to something much larger than an HOA dispute. Robert sat down heavily like his knees gave out underneath him. Somebody near the back whispered, "Holy hell." I closed the credential wallet gently and looked directly at Brenda. "You should have stopped after the mailbox notice," I said. Brenda finally stepped backward. Then her phone started ringing. Brenda stared at the ringing phone like it had personally betrayed her. The sound cut through the clubhouse in sharp little bursts while nobody else moved. Finally she snatched it off the table and answered in a low voice. "What?" Her expression changed almost immediately. Not panic yet. Worse. Disorientation. She turned slightly away from the room while listening, one hand pressed against her temple. "Who authorized that?" she whispered. The residents watched her carefully now. Not like neighbors watching an HOA president. Like people watching somebody lose control of a machine they thought could never fail. Brenda ended the call without another word and looked directly at Robert. "You contacted someone outside the board." Robert swallowed hard. "I called legal counsel after the county filings surfaced." "You stupid coward." The words slipped out before she could stop them. A few residents exchanged looks instantly. Masks were falling fast tonight. Brenda realized it too late. She straightened her blazer and faced the room again, trying to rebuild authority from pieces already sliding apart. "This meeting is officially closed," she announced. "Any further accusations will be addressed through private legal channels." Nobody stood up. Nobody reached for their keys. That silence told her everything. Then Henderson slowly raised his folder again. "You said the same thing to my wife before she died," he said quietly. Brenda closed her eyes for half a second. Tiny movement. Exhaustion finally slipping through the cracks. But she still chose pressure. "Mr. Henderson, emotional manipulation changes nothing about covenant obligations." The room erupted after that. Not screaming. Worse. Real voices. Angry voices. Questions from every direction at once. Did you fake hearings? Why were veterans targeted? What happened to the reserve funds? Why are there hidden enforcement lists? Brenda tried speaking over them, but the room no longer belonged to her. Phones stayed raised now. Camera lights glowing across the clubhouse like tiny spotlights. I stepped back from the table and let it happen. That part mattered. People needed to hear themselves speak without fear for once. The projector behind Brenda still cast pale blue light across the wall. Half the room glowed cold under it. Robert finally stood up from his chair with trembling hands. "There is something else," he said. Brenda spun toward him immediately. "Do not." But Robert kept talking. The landscaping contracts were inflated. A sharp breath moved through the room. Several invoices were routed through Whitmore Property Consulting. Brenda's face drained of color for the first time all night. Somebody near the front whispered, "That is her company." Robert nodded slowly. The board approved over $400,000 in vendor payments during the last 18 months. The room exploded into noise again. Brenda slammed both palms against the table. "Those were management fees." "No," Robert answered quietly. "Those were kickbacks." Even the air seemed to stop moving after that sentence. Brenda looked around the clubhouse wildly now. Not calculating anymore. Searching. For support. For control. For somebody willing to rescue her version of reality. Nobody moved. Outside, headlights suddenly swept across the front windows. Bright white beams crossed the walls and briefly washed over the HOA crest behind her chair. Several residents turned toward the parking lot at once. More engines followed. Car doors closing. Radios crackling faintly through the glass. Brenda heard it too. Her shoulders stiffened immediately. I already knew what she was about to see before she reached the window. County vehicles. 2 of them. Along with a dark sedan from Regional Housing Enforcement. Somebody inside Willow Creek had finally decided silence cost too much. Brenda took one slow step backward from the board table. Then another. The projector light flickered across her face while red and blue reflections began pulsing faintly through the clubhouse blinds. Robert sat back down heavily and covered his eyes with one hand. Nobody spoke anymore. We all listened to the footsteps approaching the front doors. The clubhouse doors opened with a heavy hydraulic hiss. Cool night air rolled inside carrying the smell of wet pavement and engine heat from the county vehicles outside. 2 county investigators stepped through first wearing dark jackets with official patches stitched over the chest. Behind them came a woman from Regional Housing Enforcement carrying a thick black case file under one arm. Nobody in the room spoke. Brenda stood frozen near the projector table while the flashing lights outside painted red and blue reflections across the clubhouse walls. The lead investigator scanned the room once before looking directly at me. "Mr. Caldwell." I nodded once. "Professional. Quiet." Then he turned toward Brenda. "We received multiple complaints regarding unlawful enforcement activity and financial irregularities tied to Willow Creek Estates." Brenda finally found her voice again. "This is highly inappropriate. You cannot interrupt a private board proceeding without notice." The investigator handed her a folded document. "Notice was issued this afternoon." Brenda unfolded the paper with stiff hands. I watched her eyes move faster across each line. Temporary Records Preservation Order. Financial Review Authorization. Enforcement Suspension Directive. Every shortcut she built her system on had just slammed into a legal wall. The room stayed completely silent except for the soft rustle of paper and the low crackle of police radios outside. Then the housing enforcement officer stepped toward the front table and opened the black case file. "We will also require immediate access to archived HOA records, enforcement correspondence, and vendor contracts." Brenda's eyes flicked toward the side office hallway automatically. Reflex. The same hallway with the filing cabinets she tried hiding earlier. The housing officer noticed it too. "So did I." Robert slowly pushed his chair back and stood up. He looked exhausted now. 10 years older than when the meeting started. "The archived records are in the rear office," he said quietly. Brenda snapped toward him. "Robert, do not say another word." But it was too late. He reached into his jacket pocket and placed a silver keyring on the board table. The metal clink echoed sharply through the room. "I am done covering for you." A resident near the back actually applauded once before stopping awkwardly. Nobody laughed. The moment felt too heavy for that. Brenda stared at the keys like they were radioactive. Her whole posture changed then. Smaller somehow. Less polished. The perfect suburban authority figure had started collapsing into an ordinary woman surrounded by paperwork she could no longer control. The investigators moved toward the hallway while the housing officer began collecting resident statements one by one. Henderson sat straighter than I had seen all week. The young mother with the wheelchair ramp notice finally smiled for the first time that night. Outside, more residents gathered near the clubhouse windows watching the county vehicles under the streetlights. News traveled fast in subdivisions like this. Fear traveled faster. Brenda suddenly pointed toward me. "You planned this." Her voice sounded thin now. Dry. "You moved here intentionally." I looked at her for a moment before answering. "No," I said calmly. "You built this yourself." She opened her mouth again but nothing came out. The projector behind her finally timed out and shut off with a soft click. Darkness swallowed the giant HOA crest on the wall. Somehow that felt fitting. An hour later, I stepped outside into the warm Texas night while investigators carried banker boxes through the clubhouse doors. Sprinklers clicked softly across the entrance lawns. Crickets hummed from the drainage ditch near the gate. The subdivision felt different already. Quieter in a healthier way. Less fear in the air. Henderson walked past me toward his truck and stopped briefly under the streetlight. "My wife would have liked you," he said. Then he drove away slowly beneath the blinking gate. Camera that started all of this. I stood there another minute listening to the soft mechanical hum from the security system above the entrance road. Same camera. Same neighborhood. Different people watching now. Because power never really lived inside Brenda's rulebook. It lived inside the silence everyone finally stopped protecting.